Cool.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 2 Degrees podcast brought to you by the Play On Foundation. Today's guest, I had the pleasure of meeting her. One of the first people that I met when I moved out to Vancouver, and it was just so fun to meet somebody who's on the same trajectory to booking bigger and better things every single freaking time. And so, everybody, it's Yvonne Chapman.
Hey guys, hi. Oh my God, you actually were probably one of the first people
Yeah,
I've met when I moved here. Because
you too.
when did you move to Vancouver?
Um, I want to say it's either 2017 or 2018.
Okay,
Whenever Take Two was.
okay. Take two. Oh, okay. So I moved here like just over 7.5 years ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that was 20, maybe like 2015, 2016,
Hmm.
something like that.
Wow.
2015, yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Been here for a while.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, you came after me then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just saw posts. Saw that you're another actor in the city, and I was like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, I'm really grateful for that because I'm no, honestly, like I'm really terrible. I'm really gun shy when it comes
Hmm.
to connecting with people because I feel like, oh, who am I? Like they probably don't want to know
Yeah.
me. But when someone reaches out to me, I really appreciate it. So I'm kind of a hypocrite that way.
Mm. No, well, with that
Uh,
now, like, what's it like when? Because I'm sure you're getting a lot of people messaging you, especially for like kung fu and all that stuff. What's that been like?
I so again, I'm horrible at social media and I don't check the messages that of people like how they filter those requests
Hmm.
on the side. I'm really bad at checking them. So sometimes I miss some
Mm.
messages and follows or whatever because I'm just so bad at social media. And I say that because it's like I just don't go on it very often.
Fair.
I try to do as much as I can to, promote the projects and support the people that I, obviously care and love about. And that's what I use it for. But then outside of that, for my own personal use, I'm like, I don't know. So I missed some stuff and I felt really bad. Like the other day, I was looking at my requests. I'm like, I should check them because sometimes things filter through
Mm.
there. And one of the lovely directors from this season in Kung Fu messaged me. I'm like, oh shit, I'm so sorry. Like
Yeah.
it went unseen for months and
Hmm.
I look like a jerk. So anyway, that's how it's like.
Nice.
It's just if I've not messaged somebody back, it's unintentional. I'm just
There it
not
is.
good at
This
it.
is this is why we did this episode for that
Yeah,
formal apology for
I'm
everybody.
very sorry.
Well, with that now, so let's start on that kung fu.
Hmm.
Um, what was that like first booking it?
Hmm.
But then also, what was it like channeling your inner villain?
Yeah. Okay, so booking it, I mean, I booked it during the pandemic, so it's just by self-tape.
I thought you booked it before. I thought you guys finished the first season.
No, so what happened was I was also a recast.
Ooh.
So during the first time that the world shut down,
Hmm.
March, when was that? March, oh my God, almost 3 years ago.
Yeah,
Crazy, right?
2020.
Yeah, I was not Jalon, somebody else was. And then
Hmm.
for whatever reason, as these things go, there was a recast in that. So when they came back to film the pilot again, when things start to open up, I think it was in September, October,
Hmm.
I got the call for the self-tape. And then so I taped it, got some notes, retaped it, and then it was about like, I don't know, 2, 3 week process before I
Hmm.
actually booked it. But during that time, I mean, I was actually ready to go back to Calgary to go visit family and stuff. And as these things go, when you book a trip, you book something.
Yeah.
That's kind of the
Yeah.
saying in the acting
Yeah.
circle. So that's what happened. But I was really thrilled because I got the breakdown of it, saw what the story was,
Hmm.
saw what the character was, and how badass she was. And but more than that too, like even the sides for the initial audition they already got right into her tragic backstory. So
Hmm.
I'm like, cool, this isn't a girl who's just gonna show up and be the villain,
Hmm.
like this is somebody I can actually sink my teeth into. So I was thrilled just to do
Hmm.
the audition, as we kind of have
Yeah.
to think of it, right? Because we audition more than we work.
Yeah.
And so you just take the audition as a work and as the
Yeah.
fun process of
Yeah.
it. And that's what I did. And so luckily,
I tell everybody that too, where it's like when I meet actors that are like, I can't wait to work, can't
mhm,
wait to be on set and work. And I was like, well, that's not work, that's playing. when you're on set, you're playing,
Mm.
and the real work happens for the audition. And it's as simple as the work is committing to a choice, having the confidence to commit to a choice. Because when you're on set, and I've done this too, where I kind of take the shortcut sometimes, and I'll ask the director or ask the writer, "What did you mean by this?
Right.
How should I play this?" Whereas if you in the audition, you got to make that choice yourself, and then that's where you need to just be confident in what you're going to put on tape and be happy with it.
Yeah, and I feel like the work, like personally for me, the work is all of it.
Mhm,
Because it's just a progression from the audition to being on set, and then
mhm,
being on set, having that, also having that confidence too to say, I would love to try to play with this
yeah.
for, and having the making those choices for those characters, to really collaborate. And luckily, it's like when you're working with a great team like on Kung Fu, it's like they're always open to that kind of collaboration and that back and forth. Um, but yeah, I agree with you. It's you start the work when you get the sides,
Mhm,
and then keep on working.
yeah. Yeah.
Because even when you're on set, there's nothing guaranteed that you're not going to be pulled out from that set. So always continue also to be grateful
Mhm,
for being there,
mhm,
and being kind to everybody, and just showing up every single day like fully prepared and
mhm,
ready to, like you say, play.
yeah.
Because that is our work. That's what we're paid to do, is to show up and
Yeah.
really give it our all.
What's been your experience with that world of getting the rug pulled underneath you?
Oh God, like you mean when you're so close to something and then they're like,
All so it's like I have this theory where every actor is gonna go through the exact same things,
mhm,
and it usually falls in line with things that you would get excited about. So the first one typically being the actor role that you're so excited for, and you tell everybody about it, and then the scene gets cut.
right. Oh no.
And then to the degree of you being the top two choices for a project and then it going to somebody else, or the recast, like that one hurt for me was the first time I got recast, and I was like, because I was so excited, and they were about to go to camera like the next week,
Oh shoot,
and then
I'm
I got a
sorry.
call, they're like, oh, we're gonna go in another direction. I was like, and I was trying to be so quiet about it the entire
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
And then on that weekend, I like posted something about so excited to get to work this week.
Oh
And
shoot.
then literally the next day, like they decided something else. And I was like, wow, I never deleted a post so quickly in my life.
I am really actually quite superstitious when it comes to that now
Hmm.
because of that reason. I will not
Mm,
tell anybody that I booked something unless they're my family and they need to know for to see me, scheduling
mm,
purposes, things like that. I just don't tell people until I get to set,
yeah.
because
I
it's
don't even
happened
I
to
don't even
me.
tell people until the project is on screen.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you never know, right? And that's just the nature of the business, and it's this level of acceptance that, I mean, I think the most helpful thing for me has been looking what happens behind the camera,
Mm,
because so more often than not, it has nothing really to do with you personally. It's a creative choice, or it's a budget choice, or whatever it may be, and that really helps with the rejection of it, so to
mm,
speak. Because I mean, yeah, it's happened to me too, and I just always have to remind myself, especially when you actually look at the project after, if it doesn't hurt too much for you to do
yeah.
that, like if you've been recast or like it didn't go through or whatever, and once you heal from that rejection, you're like, okay, fine, I'll take a look at the project and see what happened and who they actually cast and
Hmm.
whatever. And then you look at it, you're like, okay, they made a right choice. Like I can say that I felt that way, and I could say whatever was meant for you won't miss you, and
Yeah.
whatever misses you was never actually meant for you. And then it opens the doors for other possibilities and other things to come your way, and to just have that as your grounding fundamental base level
Hmm.
for that rejection, which we go through more than 90% of the time, I think has been incredibly helpful for me anyway, to know that, and to have the faith that something else will come up.
Hmm.
um, it does not hurt any less. I understand. Sucks.
What was your growing process like
Mm,
to get to this point of being able to accept that rejection?
really feeling the rejection first. There was So I was really naive when I came into the business.
Hmm.
I did not do anything similar to it before. So I came in from a different industry, came into this completely green.
What were you
And
doing before?
I was doing finance before. And I know people are probably sick of me saying that. And I'm sick of hearing myself say that, to
Fair.
be honest. But yes, and so I worked in a different profession before. But coming into this, it's again, it's one of those things where it's so different in a corporate job where you get an entry level position and you put in some sweat equity and
Hmm.
hard work, and yeah, you're expected to move up a level, right? You are rewarded for that.
Hmm.
Whereas in acting, it's like you can put in so much sweat equity and hard work, and for whatever reason it just doesn't quote unquote happen for you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the set standard that people think of as an actor, right?
Yeah, where people they think there's a progression. Oh,
Yeah.
you did an actor role, so that must mean you're going to get a bigger role next time. Oh, you did the bigger role, so that means you're going to get a lead next time.
Mhm.
Oh, so you did a lead in a TV show, that means you're going to get your own movie now. And it's just like, no.
No. But that's an inherent problem with it, is that why do we measure our success based on that um, fallible progression
Hmm.
that's been put out there? I don't know who said it, and it makes sense, obviously. I think that's how we all want to think of it, right?
Hmm.
In any profession that you do, but any profession that you do, that's never a guaranteed anyway.
Yeah.
More so in a corporate life, of course, and an acting life, but regardless, I came into it thinking like, okay, I'll just work for a year at
Hmm.
this and really try really hard, and I'm sure I'll book something. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
that's not how it works. Like
Yeah.
in the artist life, it's like you got to pay your dues. People have to get to know you. You got to one understand like what the hell it is that you're doing and build a craft and build a skill
Hmm.
before for anything really, before anyone's willing to put some money behind you and hire you.
Yeah.
It is a business at the end of the day. So I came in really naive, and that kicked my ass at first. Thinking, I worked really hard, and I still work really hard, but I do it now more for myself than it is to try to progress at a certain level, so to speak. Or by level, I mean booking something,
Yeah.
because booking, that's completely out of my control, but I can control how good I am. I can
Hmm.
control how good I feel about my own work. And as long as I'm doing that and I see progression in myself, that's really the only measurement that I can take. And that's how I measure success now. It's not the measurement of like how big my projects are, what the next level is, or whatever. I have a team to worry about that for me. And for me, it's like, okay, I understand that business aspect of it. Now I got to compartmentalize and put forward how I feel about what I'm doing.
Hmm.
Which took a really fucking long time to get to, though.
So then what was it like before then, where we're back in your early days
Mhm.
and you're coming in as naive as you did, and you got an audition, you did the audition, and then you realize you didn't get it? Where would your mind go?
Oh, a spiral
Hmm.
like of self-deprecation,
Wow.
um, of really beating myself up for it, thinking like, oh, I just suck. I'm not good enough. What do I need to do? Trying to compare myself to other people, which in this game
Hmm.
does not serve you. And then on top of that, having almost like a scarcity mindset of like, well, I'm also an Asian woman, and that's going to be really tough for me, and there's only so much room to go around. Luckily, that went away really quick because I found some really good people in Vancouver. You included some other, friends who you know of, that we just supported each other. We
Hmm.
just saw what the game was and said, okay, we're not going to be pitted against each other, even though we're meant to feel that way. That's not going to serve any of us.
Yeah.
So let's support and uplift each other to try to get us out to the forefront, because there's a bigger picture of what we're trying to do.
Hmm.
And that's to get our faces out there and have people who look like us and are from our similar background feel that it's possible, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it just, that for me, I remember there was a stint in the first year or two where like I could not get out of bed for like 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it was tough, like emotionally and mentally, because I gave up a lot. Like I gave up my whole other life. I drove from Calgary, packed up my Honda Civic, and drove the 11 hours here and moved back into like a basement apartment, and then took the jobs I used to take in university,
Hmm.
you know. And I was actually really happy to do that. And then when the reality hit of what this business is and how hard it is, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then
Hmm.
there was just a stint where I just needed to feel that. I needed to be in that rut to be like, okay, but now I got to pick myself up. You feel sorry for yourself. You're allowed to do that once in a while, but you got to keep going. And It's really just for the love of what we do that I kept going because, as you
Mm,
know, it's hard,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Was there anybody that like a main source of motivation? Were you reading any books at the time that helped you garner that? Because that when you get to that place, it's either one of two things: you're gonna quit
Hmm.
or you're gonna keep going.
Hmm.
So what pushed you in the direction to keep going?
The continual work. It wasn't anybody specific. Um, it's gonna sound corny, but it was just honestly, it was just like the love of it was greater than my fear of failing,
Mm,
and the love of what I was doing and how great it felt to be able just to be in class to
yeah.
work. Was what really kept me going because I would always go back to like, man, this is everything for me right now. And if I can just keep tapping into that energy, then I'm okay. I can keep on doing this
Mm,
because that was greater than anything else that I feared or felt sorry for myself for, you know?
yeah.
Um, I mean, I always, I don't want to say it was very like anything in particular to acting, but um I'm constantly like I'm a podcast junkie. I love just reading and learning about all this different stuff when it comes to just perspective of life, of health, of wellness, of that, all of that. So I'm continuously like having things in my ear, so I can't really pinpoint it down to one thing.
Mm,
It was a myriad of things, I'm sure.
yeah.
Yeah. One thing that's always kept me grounded though is journaling.
Nice. Okay.
And I see a journal right there, so I'm sure
Yeah.
you do it too.
I I have so many journals
Yeah.
going, and it's like my, I guess, dilemma when it comes to journaling is where am I going to journal? Am I going to write it out? Because I have a folder of
Oh, like
journal
on your
notes on my
computer?
computer.
Yeah.
And then I have the book that I like writing in sometimes. And then I have um, notes in my emails.
Oh.
So, like, I'll compose emails and then I'll just save them
Hmm.
when I'm not by my computer or the book. And so I have like these three forms that I can journal in. But then sometimes I'm just like, I want to journal in my book,
Yeah.
or I think this is a journal that's appropriate for the computer. And it's
Yeah.
like it's a strange thing,
Yeah.
but there's a particularness when it comes to my journaling.
Have
Yeah.
you ever looked back and has anything really surprised you?
I have another journal. I have a fourth one where it's like it gives you prompts.
Hmm.
And the cool thing about this is it gives you prompts for every day of the year for 5 years.
Oh,
So after you finish the year, you go back
okay.
and then you fill it in again.
Oh,
And so you can
interesting.
see the last answers that you did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's such kind of trippy.
So it's trippy because like I'm on the third year now, so I have 2 years worth of stuff that I can look back on.
Yeah.
And it just brings you right back of just seeing what was going on in my life at that time. And it puts into perspective of like as cheesy as this sounds, where I'm a big musical person
Hmm.
and my favorite musical is Rent.
Yeah.
And so what happens in a year, 525,600 minutes,
Yeah.
is so vastly different than, or so vastly, I guess, what's the word? Not different, but there's just so much that can fucking happen
In within a year, yeah.
in 1 year.
It doesn't feel that way, but it
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
And so it's that journaling has taught me also to kind of, and like what we were talking about earlier, where putting into perspective, just going a day at a time and understanding what you can do in a day,
Mm.
what you can do in a week, what you can do in a month. Like, sure, so much can happen in a year, but then within that, all those little micro moments,
Hmm.
like so much can happen. And I think that's where the growth is. It's kind of like a stock chart
Mm.
where if you just look at the numbers from, and if you just go monthly,
Hmm.
you'll see a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah.
But then if you choose to look at the entire year, you'll see just a gradual rise.
Right.
And so it's an interesting practice just to sit back. And I've been trying to get back more into meditating, but that's like the grounding thought within my meditation where it's like it's about this moment now. And they talk about, oh, you got to be present, you got to be this, but then it's also for me just understanding how much time you really have.
Mm.
So
Does that ever scare you to think about how much time you actually have? Has
Oh
that
yeah,
ever been a sobering experience?
yeah. And again, like we were talking about earlier, where it led me to really sit in understanding day at a time was when I was in California driving around. It got really lonely at moments, and all I was thinking was like, I just want to drive back to Vancouver now.
Oh,
But the only thing that was keeping me there at the time were I had meetings and things like that. So if I had a meeting in the next week, I'd literally schedule my entire week by the hour,
wow. Okay.
just so I can cross out what I've done.
Hmm.
And I can visually see that I'm getting closer to that date versus when I wasn't doing that and I was just sitting waiting for the meetings to happen. I was like, time is going by so slowly.
Yeah. So
So
tripped up
yeah,
on that. Can I ask you about the loneliness
yeah.
part of it? Because I think that's something we all go through, especially in this business. And it we have this kind of smoke and mirrors image, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes where you're just showing the really cool pictures of social media and da
Yeah.
da da. Like, but in those moments when you say that it was really lonely, where do you think that was stemming from?
Mm, there's a part of me that believes in connection,
Hmm.
and which is part of the reason why I did the podcast in the first place was to make those connections again. And but I was really attached to physical connection,
Okay.
and the podcasting has definitely helped me understand that I value more emotional and mental connection versus physical. But the physical connection is so immediate,
Right.
and so just being able to sit next to somebody and talk or share a meal speaks volumes on how I'll feel after that interaction.
Hmm.
So in those moments where it's like it's just me, and especially if I'm not in a city and I'm parked off like boondocking somewhere on the just off of a highway randomly, where it really puts into perspective of how far away people are,
Hmm.
and it just made me miss being around people.
Wow. Okay.
um
Was this during COVID? I mean, we're still in COVID, but was
mhm.
this during like a peak of a lockdown that you were
mm,
driving, or was it kind of in the middle?
I'd say it was more on the tail end of it.
Okay.
But even with that, I I don't like just randomly going out to socialize.
Oh, yeah.
Every now and then I'll bite the bullet and I'll be like, sure, I'll go to this bar alone. I'll check out this dive bar and spark up a
Sure.
conversation. And sometimes I'll meet somebody and have very insightful conversations. Other times it's like, why did I come out?
Right. Yeah, I hear you on that.
And like one thing about the space is like I've kind of made it for me to enjoy.
Hmm.
Even when I had my place in Vancouver, where I rarely left because I had my gym in it,
Hmm.
I had my own little garden, I had space if I wanted to meditate, I
Hmm.
had like my balcony that I can put my hammock on and just hang out.
Yeah.
And so I like creating a space. And when people say like a sacred space, that's what it really felt like.
Yeah.
So with this, I enjoy being in it.
Hmm.
So even though I'm like in really cool cities, it would still take some convincing for me to get out.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. When it comes to loneliness too, it's just also I force myself in a situation that allows me to enjoy my own company.
That's really important.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, you are going to be with yourself for the rest of your life.
Hmm.
That's the only person that is guaranteed to be with you all the time.
Yeah.
So you hope that you like being with that person.
Yeah.
It takes some learning to do. It takes some growth to do to be okay with that, you
Hmm.
know. And that's why I was curious about the loneliness part of it. Because I'm similar in that every like I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the impression I get from you is like your interactions are very intentional,
Hmm.
and so are mine. Like I don't have a problem going out and being in a big group, but that takes a lot out of me. And sometimes I just crave either just time by myself
Yeah.
in complete isolation, or just, I always prefer the one-on-one or
Mm.
like a small group where I can actually have a good conversation, hear everybody, and just have that for a few hours, and then go home and be by myself.
Yeah.
And I never really feel lonely, but I do understand that aspect of loneliness where, because sometimes I feel most lonely in bigger crowds,
Yeah.
oddly enough, you know.
I've never felt more lonely at an industry party in LA
Hmm.
when I was somebody's plus one.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, what was
Because
that
it's
like?
it's not about me.
Mm,
And fair. It's like it's about my friend, but then you're quickly not shunned, but when it's not about you or you don't really have anything to offer. And this was a Grammy party as well.
hmm.
So it's like I'm nowhere near the music industry. If it was like an Oscar thing or an award like for the Emmys or whatever, I could talk about the shows and stuff and then
Sure,
they get it.
sure.
But then here it's just like I'd be talking with somebody and you can kind of just see when their interest is lost.
Oh,
And
oh
then
no.
another thing that I learned was there's so much clout in being introduced versus you just being alone at a party.
Hmm.
Where I've been at parties and like I'll have my PR rep next to me and then she's making all the introductions to people, shaking hands, and then she'll leave.
Hmm.
But then because that introduction is made, there seems to be more of an engagement happening.
Yeah, I think there's probably a sense of ease for people because it's
Mhm.
like, oh, okay, I understand who you are and where you're coming from, and it's because those those interactions are so awkward for everybody. For everybody, it's not just for us. I think
Yeah.
on the other side too, what we forget is we're so self-concerned. Like, oh my God, I'm probably coming off as like this really annoying uh, nobody or whoever it is. We all feel like we're playing imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
And just on the other side, they're probably feeling that as well. Or
Yeah.
just like, who are you and what's going on? But then you have that barrier, not barrier, that buffer, so to
Mhm.
speak, of someone coming in and introducing you really helps the situation. So it's like a little bit more of like an ease to it. So I can understand
Yeah.
that because it's kind of taking off the heavy lifting for you.
Yeah.
To have to go up and put yourself out there and be like, hey, I'm so and so. You don't know me. You probably don't want to know me, but I'm by myself and you look cool and I just like to have a conversation. You know what I mean? Like it's so awkward. I hate situations like that. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Excuse me.
did you or what's your visa status with the States? Do you have your
I have my
O1?
O1.
So when you got your O1, how did you go about getting that?
So my O1 was through my manager in LA.
Okay.
So he really helped me with it to set me up. And I went through actually a lawyer in Miami
Mhm.
who was a great guy. And I just had to, what you typically have to do is, it sounds so gross, but it's like, what is it? A human being of
Yeah. So
extraordinary ability
so the reason why
crap.
I ask is
Yeah.
because that whole needing to introduce yourself,
Hmm.
did you have to draft any references, letters of references,
I
or did
did.
your lawyer do all that?
No, I drafted them and then I reached out to
What was that like? So right now I've applied for my green card
yeah.
and
Oh, because you've had your own one for a while, right? And so,
I've been working on American projects in the States and stuff with an O2, so specific to those
oh, okay.
projects.
Yeah.
And I just figured just go straight to the green card.
Okay.
And it's just so weird drafting up a
Yeah.
reference letter and then getting to that paragraph about talking about yourself.
I know it's gross. I want to vomit right now. I do what I hate and maybe this is something I need to work on
Hmm.
because there's just this, oh, I don't know if you can feel it in my body right now, but the uncomfortableness of having to talk myself up is just disgusting
Is
to
there
me.
any sentence that stands out that you had to type out?
I I think
Tell
I've
me
scrubbed it
about
from my brain
tell
to
me
be like,
about Yvonne in these
I
letters.
can't. Oh, I can't. I like honestly, I really do think I just scrubbed it from my brain. I think
Hmm.
there would be like, um, yeah, like,
What's an adjective that you used
oh
for yourself?
God, like she'd be an asset. to a production or something like that. Like just something I can't say it. And I was always just so grateful when I reached out to people and they're like,
Yeah.
no, I'll write it for you. I'm like, oh, thank
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Like, because it's, and fair enough, like people have asked me for reference letters and I always offer that as well. But then I always give them permission, like, hey, by the way, talk your stuff up. Like I will write, like I will do it for you, but if you prefer and you're more comfortable writing it yourself, I'm like, make yourself huge. Like
Mm,
I'm giving you permission. I will sign that off because I think the world of you. Like
mm,
I will do it for you or you can do it, but I'm telling you don't feel gross about it
yeah.
because I understand this is just what you kind of have to do.
Yeah.
And that, oh, it's horrible. It's really horrible. So I always go back to the when actually I sent a note to one of the showrunners who gave me a note for
Mm.
that, and he wrote me this lovely note, and I was going through files and I saw it again and I sent him a note again just to say thank you because I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't have to write that myself. I don't know what it is. It's
Yeah.
just like I'm more self-deprecating. I'm more comfortable living in that than I am in
Talk to me about that.
I don't know what's wrong with me.
Interesting. I don't even think it's just you, because like
Yeah.
I've spoken with other actors who went through the process and have drafted letters, and there were few that were like, oh no, I don't mind doing it. I like writing about myself. It's like, cool, awesome. And then there's the other ones where it's like, oh, I dreaded that part.
I just can't because I think that's also how I like to work too. I'm
Hmm.
never happy. Like I'm never satisfied with anything that I do. I'm really not. Every single time I watch something, I'm like, oh, fuck, I should have done that. Oh, I could have done this. Like
Interesting.
always,
Hmm.
always. Like, and I, is it a form of torture? I don't know. Like, am I,
Hmm.
it's, but I think it's a way of keeping myself in check because I
Okay.
always just, I have no idea to be
Yeah.
honest,
Yeah.
but it's just so uncomfortable for me. I can't do it.
I used to, and I was speaking with another friend of mine, um, and he brought up that the understanding of taking a compliment,
Hmm.
where the one thing was that he brought up that was interesting, where he's like, another person's compliment is not meant to bring you down. So,
Mm.
like, for the example that he used was, if he's filming and it's coverage on the other person,
Hmm.
and then they do a take, and then the director gives them praise, they turn it around, do his cover, and then they're like, moving on.
Yeah.
And then he had that hurdle of like trying to get over, well, what about my
Right. Like,
compliment?
did I do a good job? Yeah.
And it's like it took a while to or and another thing that he had to get used to was, because it's common where a director will ask you, or it's like, are you good with that?
Mm-hmm.
And then what goes through your mind if that ever happens?
I immediately throw it back and I'm like, are you good with that? Because I can't see the monitor.
Hmm.
Right? Like I could feel good about it, but I know I've done enough self tapes to know that like, hey, I felt really good about that take. And I watch them like, what the fuck was that? Like,
Hmm.
and then all of a sudden the ones that I don't feel good about, there was something really interesting on tape. Like it's just film is a weird thing.
Hmm.
And I'm talking about film in general, right? Like you don't know what the camera picks up and what it catches. And like what you think is shit could be really great on camera.
Yeah. Were you ever one to watch playback?
I would love to, always, but there's never time. And
I can only assume though for kung fu, because of the stunt aspect.
I have seen the stunts. So what the stunts do, which is really great, is that they film it on their phones,
Mhm.
and so you can see the
You
immediate
see the
playback.
angles, you see, yeah.
Yeah, and so they're like, "Hey, this didn't sell. Let me show it to you." I'm like, "Okay, great." And
Mm,
that's very different because it's a very specific. It's almost like a choreographed dance, right?
yeah.
As you know. And so seeing that is like I can make those adjustments right away. Where in the acting side of it, I almost wonder if they don't have. Look, to each their own. I personally would love to see playback
Mhm.
because I'm not going to get I'll get down on myself, but in a constructive way, be like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it better. And this is, my idea. Let's go for it. Right.
Mhm.
There's just not enough time. There's just
Hmm.
never enough time on film. As you know, it's like TV moves so incredibly fast that,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know if the directors get time to watch the playback.
Mhm.
Like they're there at the monitor saying, okay, we got to move. We got to get going. Right. We
Mhm.
got to make our day. So, um, anyway, to say all that, I wish I could see the
Yeah.
playback to
Have you ever, I guess, seen the episode afterwards and you're like, oh, I should have done something else?
every single time.
Really?
There has not been one thing I've ever done where I'm like, that was perfect. There is never ever like maybe one day when I'm old and I'm just at my whatever and I'm like at a level of self-acceptance that
Oh
I'm not
no.
at yet. Maybe that will be the goal. But no, I every single time I look at something I'm like, fuck, could have done this. So like, not to say there aren't moments that I don't like. Like
Mhm.
there's moments I'm like, okay, that was all right.
Yeah.
That's fine. No, but for the most part, I just ruminate it in my head and be
Mm.
like, I could have done that. You
What's
should have done
what's
this.
dialogue like on set then? Where do you ever get experimental with your takes?
I do. I
Okay.
personally do. Um, I try to make these minor adjustments,
Hmm.
and then, as you know, on the day too, when you get in the atmosphere and you're playing with the other players, usually for the first time for
Hmm.
these scenes, you don't really get much rehearsal. You discover things. You're like, "Ooh, I kind of like that. I'm gonna keep that." And then in the next take, you kind of do something else with certain different iterations of things,
Hmm.
and that's the play of it. Like that's what we're supposed to be doing. Um, and then I always think in the back of my mind too, I'm like, well, what's gonna make it really fun for the showrunners and editors too,
Hmm.
right? Like because we need to piece together the story. We're storytellers, and I don't know what everyone else is doing in other scenes throughout the episode.
Yeah.
So I'm like, in that regard, like it's also part of my job to give variations because variations will help tell the story better.
Hmm.
So if there's something that didn't work in one of my takes, then they can use something else.
Were you always confident to be experimental, or how did you gain that confidence?
Just preparedness. I was
Mm.
never always confident, I should say. I'm getting there,
Yeah.
being way more confident now, but I find that being experimental goes hand in hand with how prepared I am, and that's knowing my
Yeah.
lines inside out, like stone cold.
Hmm.
So it just comes out of my mouth naturally. That's personally for me, like I cannot go to set not being fully memorized on my
Yeah.
lines
Yeah.
because otherwise I'm just stumbling through it, you know.
Hmm.
I never want to do that. Not to say that it hasn't happened sometimes where your brain just has
Yeah.
a fart and won't work, you know. But that has been synonymous for me when it comes to like preparedness and play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I think of like just being able to know your lines back and forth
Mhm.
and just being able to say it, I go straight to like litigation scenes.
Oh
So
God.
was that like a big learning curve, or were you already into that by the time you got to family law and street legal?
Um, yeah, I think those scenes for those big words for I mean they weren't too tough for me because it's about the intention behind it,
Hmm.
right? So it's not just exposition. It can't be for me. I know some words, some things you just have to get information out for the
Hmm.
interest of time and storytelling, but for me to be able to get that inside and out and for it to flow really easily, I need to understand, well, okay, well, why am I saying
Yeah.
this? And so for street legal with any of those scenes where I'm in litigation or I don't want to use the word interrogating, but it was interrogating like a somebody from the other side.
Hmm.
It would be like, okay, but what am I trying to drive at? What's the end purpose here and what's the goal? So all of those, the verbiage for that, that's how I got my head and my tongue around it, for it to be stone cold. But
Hmm.
yeah, there were moments too where like I'd just be thrown in there, and especially when they change the dialogue and you're like, oh crap, okay, the flow's changed. All right, okay, that's fine, but that's also part of our job too,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Have you always been great with memorization?
No, it took a long time.
Hmm.
Like I always tell people, memorization is a muscle.
Yeah.
You have to keep working it. Like it's like any other muscle in your body.
Yeah.
It will get stronger the more that you work it. So now I can look at a pair of sides or whatever and see a few paragraphs and get it done within like an hour.
Hmm.
Um, but it's just muscle memory for
Yeah.
that.
That's why, like, when it comes to, I like to use the word jargon.
Hmm.
When it comes to just getting jargon out, where that aspect of repetition, even if I don't understand the sentence yet,
Hmm.
I'll just repeat it because then my mouth just is used to the patterns,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I always find that fascinating when it comes to a point where you have dialogue where when you first get the sides and you're like, I have no idea what this means.
Hmm.
But then by the time you actually put it down, the way it comes out,
Hmm.
you sound like you've been doing it for decades.
Yeah.
Like that occupation, not
Yeah.
acting, but like if you're a lawyer, it sounds like you, oh, did you used to be a lawyer? Did you
Yeah.
used to be a doctor? All
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Oh man. So what's new with you?
What's new with
What's
me?
new in the world of you?
Oh
Oh,
man.
one thing I wanted to talk about
Yeah.
too. Avatar.
Yeah.
Avatar Kyoshi?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm a fan of the
Are
series
you?
as well.
Sweet. Yeah.
So like tell me about that. Tell me about that experience. And
Oh
were
man.
you a fan?
Yeah. And I watched it a while ago,
Hmm.
and then I rewatched it when I got the part, and then I was reading the Kyoshi books, which are
Yeah.
fantastic. They're so good. I like this character. I mean, she's incredible.
Hmm.
Her backstory, another tragic one. I don't know what that says about me that I'm so. I mean, I love the tragic backstories. No, but she's so rich,
Yeah.
and I was terrified,
Hmm.
terrified because I know that it has a huge fan base,
Yeah.
a loyal fan base. I know that Kyoshi is obviously like all the avatars, bigger
Yeah.
than life. And I'm like, I don't want to disappoint
Hmm.
anybody. I really
From
don't want
Kyoshi in the show, it's like flashback.
to.
Is this flashback or do we get to see you do some
I
earthbending?
can't say
Okay.
anything.
All right. Fair.
Not until Netflix
Ah,
lets me.
fair. Okay.
But
When
that's fair enough. I don't want to spoil anything for
mhm,
anybody. But all I can say really is that like I think fans of the original
yeah,
are just going to be really, really happy with this
nice.
because the way that they've kept true to the story, but also it's just so satisfying.
Yeah,
It's so satisfying and it's beautiful.
nice.
From what I've seen so far on set and, just from like screen grabs of what they were shooting, I'm like, this is phenomenal.
Hmm.
They've really paid attention to detail,
Hmm.
really have. Like the team knows the audience,
Yeah,
and I think they're huge fans of it themselves. Like everybody that I've gone into when I met them, from wardrobe to hair to everybody on that set, they are gushing about how much they love the anime series. They're
yeah,
gushing about how like
nice.
it is a dream for them to work on this project because they're such huge fans of the source
Wow.
material.
Yeah,
And so when you hear that, I'm like, there's no way that they're not doing this wrong. Like they really, oh my God, I'm
that's
just
cool.
really excited for everyone to see it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 Tell me about the process of getting into character because I'm curious to hear your perspective on what the makeup and wardrobe did for you.
Huge. I mean,
Hmm.
not just for Kyoshi, but honestly for any project.
Yeah.
Um, the hair and makeup is stepping into another skin for me.
Is it is it a inaccurate assumption for me to say that Kyoshi would have been the most not outlandish, but like when it comes to hair and makeup, that was the biggest transformation.
I I've seen some big transformations on that show.
Mm.
Oh, for
For
me,
you, yeah.
for me.
Out of all the characters that you've done, because like for
Oh
Street
yeah,
Legal, okay, I'm sure you've
for
put on a
sure.
blazer before.
Yeah. For Street Legal was fun because like I cut my hair in a way
Hmm.
that I would never do for
Hmm.
my own. I just, there's certain mannerisms that I try to put in. Like, so that for me, Kiyoshi visually just just on the hair, makeup, and wardrobe side, yes, was definitely the biggest transformation that I've done so far.
Yeah.
They went full out for that,
Wow.
which is amazing. Like but you know how it is. You step into like this otherworldly kind of costume
Hmm.
and makeup, and you're like, this isn't me.
Yeah.
Now I'm this person. And it just helps with that psychological aspect of stepping into all of it, the being of that person.
There's a quote from Sir Ian McKellen
Hmm.
where he's like, some days it's just hard to find the character
Mm-hmm.
until he gets into wardrobe and
Mm-hmm.
makeup. And then he looks in the mirror and he's like, oh, there's the character.
Yeah.
Was that the same type of feeling for you, or did you already know what you had in mind for this character?
Well, I think for Kyoshi, because they're so close to what the source material
Mm.
is, like just looking at photos, I'm like, bang on,
Mm.
right? Like they did it exact. No spoiler words there, but I mean, of course, I think people will be happy to know that they did it exactly. So, looking at that, I'm like, yeah, that's what I expected, and that's what I hoped it
Nice.
was, and it was. For other things too, I I personally don't like having to say in wardrobe and hair and things.
Mm.
For me, I think it's more fun when I let the creative team just do what it is that they want to do, um, because I want to understand the vision that the showrunners or whoever, or the
Yeah.
producers and the director, whoever, what they thought, and then for me, I love the challenge of being like, okay, now let me marry the two.
Mm.
Because there's one aspect that I think of, but mine is more emotional than it is physical for a character. And it's not until that emotional matches that physical, then I marry the two. So even for like street legal, for example, yeah, we had a collaborative effort of like, but this is their idea for her hair. This is how the vibe that she had. This is a wardrobe for her. I'm like, it makes sense. Cool. Like,
So that haircut was their idea, and you
yeah,
said yes.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm all for like playing for that. Like I will go drastic if people want me
Yeah.
to go drastic. I think it's fun,
Yeah.
right? I'm
I'm
all for
I'm
that
desperate
experimentation.
for the role. The first one that pops into my mind is John Bernthal. Um, he played Punisher,
Hmm.
and but his role in The Walking Dead, where he had to shave his head,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I just want that
You want
role.
that
I
one,
I just
hey?
want that role, that
Yeah.
moment, and to like enjoy that character arc
Yeah.
of like going into a show with a head of hair,
Hmm.
and then all of a sudden having that crack
Hmm.
where it's just like my character's done with this shit and
Yeah.
just shaves everything.
Yeah,
That's a goal. Yeah.
It's fun because I think that physical change, whether it be between within that season like he did,
Mhm.
it's symbolic too of the of this again, the emotional and psychological change of a character.
Yeah.
Because now he's stepping into something different. So something else has to change physically, right? It's kind of like the same thing you see in real life when people just have a moment where they're like, I just want to change. What
Yeah.
do?
Like
They dye their
my
hair.
hair was like
It
down to
was,
here.
yeah, I know. Did you donate it?
I still have
You
it.
still
I
have
I
it.
technically can't donate it to a lot of places because there's color in it.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I donated my hair when I cut it for street legal.
Mm,
Yeah, because I was luckily like the color grew out, so
yeah.
it was like I don't know
Nice.
7 inches
And
of.
that's the thing that like I'm going with this is like I'm gonna grow this now. So
Mhm.
then if it leads me to have to cut it again, at least I can donate it.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you got a keepsake of what it was.
It
Yeah,
was it was a look for sure.
yeah,
And then that was like the first thing that when I cut it, the first thought was like, fuck, I need new headshots now.
yeah.
I gotta did that, sent that to my manager, and I was just like, all right,
I'm always
here's
curious about that though, because like I still know it's you.
hmm.
Like the whole headshot thing. I'm like, do people really need that anymore? I mean, it seems like
Well,
such an old school thing.
one thing that I learned is the long hair was a no-no for some networks.
Really?
Um, rhymes with ball mark.
Okay. Oh, I like how you changed one letter.
That's how it rhymes. That's how it rhymes.
Is
That's the
Bulwark
rule.
even a word?
It's a brand. It's a brand.
You know what?
It's
I'm trying to think of another word and I can't. So fair enough.
exactly.
Okay.
So I've luckily I've been part of a production, but then it's like with that they the character needed to look very island like, so
Mm-hmm.
then they love the long hair.
Oh, great.
But then it's like that's not typically the lead that falls in love and stuff.
Right.
So it's like
Yeah.
that's still a goal of mine to
Right.
have that moment, that cheesy moment. Like
Mm.
there's other very romantic scenes that I'd love to be a part of
Yeah.
in like an HBO series. Is HBO still around?
Yeah.
They are?
Yeah.
Are there? I for some reason thought that, or it was just boxing. They lost the boxing rights,
Oh,
so there's no more HBO boxing.
I you're talking to the wrong girl.
Fair.
I don't know about anything with the sports. I'm like, I know
Um,
HBO is still around, but
but
anyway.
yeah, where it's like it's a completely different type of falling in love, where I grew up on rom-coms and stuff,
Mm.
and it's like that type of cheesy moment is something that I'm hoping to one day get to do.
Yeah.
And so
I hope so too.
that's the thing. It's like they don't like long hair, and it's specific to their demographic too. They
Right.
just want clean cut.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I hope that that changes because it's like it's just part of the ongoing dialogue, right?
Mm.
Of the type of look
Yeah.
that's acceptable for whatever reason. But that's interesting. Like have you ever found that there like because of your long hair, did you ever get the feedback that no, he's not getting the role, even though you're like, I can cut it though,
I
right?
had a casting director tell me directly.
Really?
It was like, oh well, they just don't like your hair.
Hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
note. Thanks.
Yeah. But you weren't like being like, oh, I'll cut it though, or
I mentioned that, but
Yeah.
then I don't know. It's like it's just
Which is funny. It's just funny to me because it's like there's so many things that can be changed,
mhm,
right? Especially if you really like the role and they like you or
yeah.
whatever. And if it's just like a hair thing, then it's a discussion of like, okay, why don't you like the hair?
Wow.
But that can be changed. Like it's
Anything
not
can be changed
anything can
though.
be changed. Yeah.
And then I'm hoping to one day get to the point where it's like getting prosthetics and stuff to completely change my look.
Oh yeah.
And first thing that pops into my mind is Colin Farrell as a Penguin,
Hmm.
and it's like it's you look at him and it's like that person that's
Hmm.
on screen could have easily been another actor,
Yeah.
but then it's like no, this guy's talent is just so impeccable. We're gonna take him and just make him look like somebody else.
Right.
And
Who was I? Oh yeah, a friend of ours was working on Star Trek,
hmm,
and he had a story that Jeff Bezos, huge fan of Star Trek,
hmm.
huge, that he came on set one day and they just threw him in the background as an extra, but he had all these prosthetics on him and he showed me a picture of what Jeff Bezos looked like and it was like full on alien. I'm like, that is so cool.
That's
That
so funny.
I'm like, but that would take he said that he was in a chair. Careful with what you wish for. I mean, I'm a huge fan of like the prosthetics thing, like I'll go
Mhm.
for it. But
They're getting better now
okay, where it's faster to
because
get it
like
on.
Jennifer Lawrence as
X,
Mystique.
right.
Yeah, where the first movie they literally had to paint her body and paste each scale,
Right.
and then by the end of it, they're like, "Here's a bodysuit."
Great. Yeah, that would
Yeah,
help
so
tremendously.
that's like a big thing, and it's funny you mentioned with Jeff Bezos. I think my favorite cameo of just fandom in general was Daniel Craig in Star Wars.
Hmm.
He was a stormtrooper,
Was he really?
so he had a mask on.
Okay.
And it's like
What?
you're Daniel Craig. You're so iconic, and you chose to be in this film for a one-liner.
Yeah, because he loves it,
You know what I mean?
right?
So it's like that's also another, I guess, milestone or goal, an actor goal is like
Mm-hmm.
to be at a point where I'm just like, hey, I really like this
Mm-hmm.
show, this franchise, whatever this is. Get me in whatever role they have.
You know what I love about that though? Because it shows that there's no ego.
Hmm.
Like why not? Like
Yeah.
why not go in for one line? Like, yeah, he's Daniel Craig, but like also he's the human being who just is a fan of the show. Like
Hmm.
I just that to me is so nice to hear that because I can't stand ego and there's a
Fair.
lot of it.
So with that, where does your head go when it comes to giving a new actor that opportunity instead of somebody that's already been established?
Yeah, why not? I mean, like, I I can't remember the actual name of the rule now, but it's where 80% of people do, or sorry, 20% of people do 80% of the work. And
Hmm.
I understand that there's a sense of, well, we have to see that they can actually do it.
Hmm.
But then it's such a vicious cycle because it's like, well, what if someone's really good
Yeah.
and they haven't been given that chance yet? And like, why not? Like,
Hmm.
we need to share more of it, especially if we're talking about like there's so much TV, there's so much content right now, and
Hmm.
the demand is just always there,
Yeah.
as far as I can see. Why not have other people show up and see what they can do? I mean, that kind of gives us more of the variety of what real life looks like anyway.
Hmm.
When you start seeing the same group of people do things over and over and over again, like amazing for them, but there's so many other people there that deserve their shot.
Yeah.
Why not? Like we were one of those. Like I still am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like who am I kidding? Like I still want a shot at so many different things, and I'm just begging, as long as I keep working really hard at it, like I'm begging for that opportunity. But and I'm saying that as somebody who's been really fortunate to make this my full-time gig, but I was there.
Yeah.
We both were at the beginning where we're just begging for that shot. I think everybody deserves that if they're working hard at it and they're good, and why not showcase new talent? I think we need it.
So then what's your opinion then if it's like, so you have Daniel Craig who's like, hey, I want to be part of Star Wars,
Mm.
and then the producers are like, all right, we'll give you this one line, versus producers finding an actor who's still fresh but can do
Oh, I
this.
see. I mean, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, that's a tough position to be in because again, we have to also understand that it's a business. and to have Daniel Craig even just for one line lends something to that.
Yeah.
Um, and arguably, like that one line, is that going to do a huge amount for that actor in a
Mhm.
mask? Is it? I don't know. Like I think there's a difference between that kind of opportunity and yeah, Star Wars is a huge franchise, but it's one line, right? Like I think I'm more referring to the fact of giving them the chance for something that's really substantial that
Mm.
can really show their chops,
Yeah, yeah.
you know? Like that to me, I think is more of a differentiating factor than a one line in Star Wars.
One thing that I noticed, and it's more predominant too in the States, where the IMDb page
Mhm.
is like, it has to be pristine, if you will.
Oh, really?
Where I think if you have on your IMDb page that it says that you were part of Star Wars, I think
Yeah.
there's credit to that. What's your
Yeah.
opinion on that?
I'm so bad. I'm so bad with this because like my whole motto has been like, I just need to focus on my work and
Agreed. Yeah.
everything else will follow as it follows with the IMDb,
Mhm.
with like social media, whatever you want to call it. For me, I'm just like, I just really just want to do my work. And so when it comes to that, like, I have no idea. I have no, I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
I'm sure it does because it's like, it says that they worked with some really credible names and people who are incredibly talented,
Yeah.
right? Of the Star Wars franchise because they're leading Star Wars. That's a huge IP.
Mhm.
That's not to be taken lightly and has a huge fan base. So yeah, I'm sure it does hold a lot of weight. I think you know, I'm sure any actor, Daniel Craig or not, would be thrilled to be on that project. I know I would. Absolutely, I would.
Mhm.
Now, if we're going to split hairs and say like who should it go to, I mean, I don't know, but um, I I am all for giving people chances to show what they can do. And so
Yeah.
for me, I'm looking at that and saying, okay, Daniel Craig being part of the project does a lot for that project. Now, if you're going to slide other people in there, there are more like unknowns. Like I know Daisy Ridley has done other stuff before,
Mhm.
but that made her a name,
Yeah.
right? And so putting someone in that position like her, giving her that shot as opposed to an already established household name, that's what I'm talking about instead of the one line.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so lucrative because yeah, every actor going into it. I wouldn't even just say it's within acting because when I used to fight and compete, like I probably when I was only at my second or third fight, I was like, I want a shot at the champ.
Sure.
I want I want the big fight.
Right.
And it's like it's just that we get so eager to want to prove ourselves.
Hmm.
And I think we lose sight of just enjoying the journey.
Yeah. I mean, I remember there's one thing that I didn't get that just killed me because I really, really wanted it. Um, but looking back, I'm like, I wasn't ready.
Hmm.
I wasn't ready.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I was testing for something. They flew me out to London. I met with a team. It was this amazing project. And I just thought, okay, well, they flew me all the way out. I think it was between me and two other girls, right? And I'm like, of course, like I think I got a good shot at this. And when I didn't get it, I was heartbroken. But then looking back, I'm like, I wasn't ready for that. I was still pretty green, and
Yeah.
I think you get these stars in your eyes, the rose-colored glasses of like, oh great, I got my shot, I'm gonna get my shot. But then looking back, I'm like, no, they knew I wasn't ready.
Hmm.
I knew I wasn't ready, but I still just wanted to do it and do it anyway.
Yeah.
But does that really help you? I don't
Hmm.
know. Like,
Hmm.
I think there has to be again the enjoying the process of like knowing what you're doing, staying in training, getting those roles incrementally like everybody else does. Like you start from a junior position and you work your way up to senior analyst. Like I'm just putting in my old, corporate days, but that's how it is. You don't get to be CEO in day one.
Hmm.
You have to work your way up and be thankful to work your way up because you don't want to bomb,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then that's a career killer.
When was the last time, just based off of what you just said, where it's
Mhm.
like you can admit that you weren't ready? When was the
Mhm.
last time you watched some of your early self tapes?
Oh God. I do keep all of mine because I like to see progression. I don't view them often, but you know, sometimes when you submit a self-tape and then you save it in the same spot, you're like, oh God, what
Yeah.
was this? And
Yeah.
you click on it, you're like, oh shit, that was bad. Um, you know what's interesting? There's been, and this comes back to the essence of a person and when something is just right for them.
Mm.
I've looked at tapes before where I've tested, like gone on to network testing for projects. I'm like, that wasn't good. In my opinion, I'm like, that wasn't very good.
Mm.
But there must have just been something about me or whatever it is that they liked that really fit the role in the project. Again, what's meant for you won't miss you,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
there's the casting is an artwork and or art form, I should say. And it's just like they just can understand when someone's just right for the role, right? Even if the audition tape wasn't fantastic, which mine weren't.
Yeah.
It's like they just there's just something there. Like you hear stories of like people who didn't even say a word and they walk into a room and it's just something about how they carry themselves and who they are and that presence. They're like, that's a guy, or that's a girl. And like they didn't even have to read. Like
Mm.
the reading
They
didn't even
know,
matter.
yeah.
They just know.
Mm.
It's all a mystery,
Yeah.
so to speak. It's just subjective, right?
What is your relationship with the audition process? And were you happy when everything went self-tapes?
When everything went self tapes, I like the audition process now. Self tapes, I find I get to play a lot more and have more fun.
Hmm.
I'm not a person that does like 20 takes per
Yeah.
one. I cap it at like 4, maybe 5 at the
Yeah.
most because I'm like now I'm just splitting hairs and I'm starting to like do the same thing. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But I do miss the in room because in room is like this almost immediate feedback that you can get from a casting director, the vibe or whatever.
Mhm.
I miss being able to go to a callback and see what the team is like. I just miss in-person interaction, you know?
Yeah. I think, because for me too, I missed in room for the purpose that I feel like I'm a lot more personable
Mm,
than a lot of other people.
mm,
And I get compliments on that whenever I meet somebody for the first time.
mm.
The first time my manager sent me off for generals, he was surprised because I'm pretty laid back and I'm just very succinct with my messages and what I have to say. And he was like, they loved you.
Great.
And it's like, but he doesn't see like that whole bubbly side of me
Mm.
when it comes to those types of interactions.
Oh, he
So
doesn't.
he was like impressed, or it's
Oh,
like
why don't you show him that? I'm just joking.
but like with that, where I feel like if two actors are seen on tape, there is a chance, very small chance, but there is a chance that you both could make the exact same choices.
Hmm. But so in the room as well, right?
But then in the room, the thing that I feel separates the actors now is what happens before they start rolling and after rolling.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because especially back in the day, I spoke with a casting director on this, and he said that back in the day, auditions were important to see if the director could work with the actor.
I see.
Not necessarily how good of an actor they were, but
Mhm.
like the concept of taking notes, being able to see a person, how they walk in and how they present themselves. It's a clear indication how they would show up on set.
Right.
And the energy that they're going to bring to set.
Right.
So I feel like that was to my advantage when I first, especially when I first came to Vancouver and I was in the room and I was leaving great impressions.
Right. Right.
And so that's one thing I miss about the room.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now you said that your relationship with the audition process now is good. What was it like before?
I think I was just I put a lot of pressure on myself to try to make something of this right away. And you know, I think at the beginning everything was really, really precious. Every single audition was really precious. Every like kind of inching towards any kind of booking was really precious to the point that I mean, I just didn't understand one, how many people were going up for certain things and just the audition process in general. So when I was doing all these tapes and not getting anywhere or getting anything, I just got really down on myself. And then I took it to the audition being the success of it being booking the role, as opposed to just having fun with the audition and just being able to act and put into practice what I've been wanting to do for a really long time. So then when I switched my mindset and said, well, this is the work and this is me having fun and this is me getting an opportunity to show what I can do. And it doesn't matter if I book the role, then everything changed,
Mm.
you know, because before it was, like I said, like I came from a very different place in life and gave all of it up to try to do this. So everything, yeah, would have been really precious to me, but that was not, I don't want to say it was a mistake. It was just a learning process to be
Yeah.
like, I couldn't do that and have a healthy mentality to stay in this business. So I
Mm.
had to change my mentality, had to change my mindset to continue on with it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. So now I like it. I know. I don't know how many actors could say that, but now I
Yeah.
like it. Um, I like just having the opportunity to play, and I think I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with taking chances, like throwing an accent that they didn't ask for.
Mhm.
You know, like certain things that I'll read the script and like the way that they written her, I'm just thinking of this right now,
Yeah.
and I can't get it out of my head. So I'm just gonna do this for me,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna throw that out there and just see what happens.
Yeah.
Because why the hell not?
I'll toss in a blooper every now and
Oh
then
yeah,
because, like, again, the process is fun and I'm having
yeah,
fun with it.
yeah.
And with that, that's what I brought to the room. So why not still keep that in my auditions
Sure.
where,
We get so heady about this stuff too, because I remember there were audition workshops and classes, and I'm not going to say which ones,
Mhm.
but you go to those and they basically teach everybody to be the same.
Yeah.
And they say, you know, they have rules of props and they have rules of like the way you're supposed to dress and how you're supposed to talk in the
Mhm.
audition and everything like that. And it's just putting these parameters of being just play on the safe side always, always, always. I mean, obviously, with the exception of like, don't ever go into an audition room with like even a fake weapon. That's just
Mhm.
stupid, right? Like, you don't want anyone to feel unsafe. But like other things, like if it makes you feel good to dress up in a certain way for a character, do it.
Yeah.
If it
Yeah.
makes you feel like, if you want to bring in like a fake cigarette or something like a rolled up piece of paper to kind of give an indication of a certain attitude, whatever, if that's how you're seeing it, why not?
Mhm.
Like it
I like how you did
the
rolled up
this,
cigarette.
yeah, you know, I don't know. Anyway, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I just think sometimes I take all that
Mhm.
advice with a grain of salt because I understand it's with good intention that they're like, okay, this is just how you should behave and be in the room or whatever. But then I think it stops people from really being themselves because
Yeah.
they're scared to. Um, and isn't the whole point of the authenticity of yourself shining through so they can see that
Yeah.
and marry that to a role? I don't know.
With that workshop too, did you ever find that you used to hold all these rules to such high standard that it put casting on a pedestal in a way?
Always, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
And
feel that's a very Canadian stereotype.
really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, because I was just terrified I was going to do something wrong
Mhm.
in the waiting room, signing the forms, like
Yeah.
going in, like the way I presented myself. It was just like all, like it felt like I had to put on a show.
Hmm.
Um,
Did
or,
you ever have a moment where, when you first started auditioning in the States,
mhm.
that you realized how much more risks you can take that you weren't taking in Canadian casting rooms?
I actually would say they were both the same.
Hmm.
So I think I would like to kind of break down that stereotype of the Canadian actor
Yeah.
because it follows us around too much and it's annoying as hell. You know what I mean? Like actor like we're just different geographically. I get it. Like I like the stereotype of us being friendly. I think we really are.
Mhm.
All that to be said, I actually felt like in LA that there was more of this nervousness than there was in Canada.
Hmm.
And maybe it's because Vancouver's a smaller market and people know each other more.
I think it's just Vancouver
Yeah, maybe.
because I remember when I first came here, there was just an air of easiness in the waiting room
Hmm.
that I didn't experience in Toronto.
Really?
Yeah,
So Toronto, was it more like LA where it's like people are looking at you like,
your competition.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like, but it's not so much that it's a level of easiness here as opposed to what it was in Toronto or LA, but it's like the people that I'd see in the rooms, they just be chatting away.
Mm.
Like I've been in a situation where the casting director had to come out and ask the people in the waiting room to like
Uh-oh.
quiet down.
Whoops.
And it's like it just put things in perspective where, and I feel like that's where I benefited because my level of seriousness towards getting into character
Hmm.
and taking just like taking the moments before I go into the room to prep myself, as
Mhm.
opposed to just chilling there. It's like, do you guys have the confidence that you're going to get this? Is that what I'm missing?
Oh, I see what you
Where,
mean.
because like
Yeah.
there's it's just it's foreign to me, and it still is. And um seeing people not in some kind of zone before they go in, and I only experienced that in Vancouver.
Wow. I think I've seen both, and I think people are respectful enough here that, especially if they know you're going into a scene that's emotionally wrought,
Mhm.
or something that requires a little bit more of like just a quietness right
Yeah.
before going in. I think sometimes when people get super chatty, it's out of nervousness.
Mm.
But I do feel that even when it's a quiet room in the waiting room, there's still a level of ease in Vancouver because I think we just are so familiar with each other.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the actors know each other, and it's like a respect level thing. It's just like, yeah, we're cool. And I about the competition thing too. I've really I ascribe to the fact that there is no competition, and what I mean
Mm.
by that is that because I've sat on the other side of it, casting like indies and stuff. Doesn't even if someone makes the same choice, they're not going to deliver it the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's just everybody is so different. Like I could see twins and they'll read it differently, you know? So when I think about that, I'm like, I'm just going to eliminate the idea that there's this like, there can only be one of us. And yeah, I get it. Only one person could get the role, whatever.
Mhm.
But the right person's going to get that role.
Yeah.
And
For my mindset towards that is like, I like competition,
mhm,
but at the same time, we're all on the same team. So while I'm rooting for you and I'm rooting for me, I look at it from the perspective of, especially if you guys are friends,
mhm,
iron sharpens iron.
I agree. Yeah,
And so if I see all the work that you're putting in, it's only going to motivate me.
totally. And
Yeah.
also just to prop each other up.
Mhm.
The worst the worst is when you tell a friend that you booked something and the first thing comes out of their mouth, oh, I wish I was doing that.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
just kind of this grossness of like, I want to be able to celebrate with you. And especially on the other side of it, if
Mhm.
they tell you like, that's amazing, I'm so happy for you, and you're just there for them, it really kind of weeds out that kind of mentality
Yeah.
of like,
And who
oh,
you
you
want to
see me
be
as
around, and
competition.
yeah.
Yeah.
You used a very specific word earlier, and I think, and it wasn't until now that I like put it together, but it's like, for me, I think it's competition, not comparison. And people tend to confuse the two, where if somebody's competition, it means that they have something different that you don't have,
Hmm.
where people then start to compare themselves to other actors, and they try to, for whatever reason, get better than that actor.
Mhm.
Where I think just being able to sit in the mentality of, okay, this person is going out for the same roles as you. The reality is the situation makes this person competition, but accepting the fact that if it goes to you, it goes to you. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Mm.
And yeah, just back to that whole mentality of iron sharpens iron. If you respect this person, I genuinely think you're only going to learn.
Yeah, I look at it more of like when it comes to other people, collaboration. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't look at competition. I don't look at comparison. It's just collaboration. Are we collaborating, like you said, on the same team where we're gonna help each other out, and whoever gets the role gets the role. Like I'm not even concerned about that.
Mm-hmm.
And the competition for me is just a competition with myself.
Mm.
I that's the only thing I can measure is what am I just getting better? Am I wanting to get better? Is something being shaken off where I'm progressing in a way because I can't measure it for anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I can be there for them and collaborate with them and help them in whatever way that they need. But with myself, I can only be in competition with myself. And then it just makes everything else a lot more friendly and easier and just an easier time to live in this world, in this industry. And yeah, I've completely eliminated the word competition and comparison with other people in this. And not to say that those feelings don't creep up once in a while because I'm human and it will.
Mm-hmm.
But I just go back to like, no, because if you're authentic, your authenticity will eliminate your competition, so to speak, Like it eliminates the need for competition, the need for yourself to validate yourself or to get that validation through comparison.
Yeah.
I just don't, I can't ascribe to it. It just doesn't help me in any way.
I think to echo off you as well with that, where I think when people come into this industry, they think that there's only one lane.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the competition becomes something that can destroy you, because you think that the lane that this person is taking is the one that you should also be on.
Right. Right. And I think people, it was really helped me is that I learned to define what success means to me as opposed to what the definition is in general in society, in general, like what people's expectations of me are.
Yeah.
Because who said that one lane or another lane or whatever it is, that's the measure of success? Like, why can't it be your own lane at your own time, at your own progression of what you're doing? If you want to do something completely different from this, if you all of a sudden want to step back and do something else, like, who's to say that that's not success? I just don't like those all covering definitions of what success looks like, because it just isn't true. It's not healthy either, right? Like, it's I've dealt with it too in my past world. It's like, if I wasn't so and so with a certain title and house and car and all this to say by a certain age, oh, then I failed in a certain way by measurement of what?
What was that age for you?
It was like 30 for
Okay.
some reason. It was like, oh, by the time you're 30, if you're not like, and again, I don't even know where it came from.
Mine was 25. I was like, I'm gonna have a house and married and 2 kids by 25.
Right? I know. And a lot of people put that expectation because that's what the normal, so wherever that comes from, society says like, oh, that's what you should have by this age for whatever reason. And you're like, but why?
Yeah.
Who said that and why does it matter?
And I think because we've been going forever, and I think you said you gotta
Oh
get
yeah,
out
I
of
gotta
here.
head out.
But
Yeah.
in line with that, especially after seeing Turning Red and
Oh, I loved
Everything
it.
Everywhere All at Once.
That's what I'm seeing soon.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch it tonight. Yeah.
It's the trend of learning that nobody knows what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah.
And it
We're
just
all
put
just trying.
it put into perspective where it's like, if I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know what it means to be an adult, then my parents didn't know.
That's a really good point.
Right.
Yes.
And it's like, when we're growing up, we think, and it's probably why we wanted to be adults so quickly, is because we look at adults and we're like, oh, they have all the answers. But the reality is they don't, and they're just going by as we're trying to get by. And then like the pressures that they put on us are based off of what they needed to do to get by.
I think something that's also been very helpful for me to tell myself, but also to extend to other people, is that everybody is always trying the best that they can in any circumstance. Just because your standards for what the best looks like they're not living up to whatever that standard is, which is garbage. It's like, you have to understand that at the moment, for whatever faculties they have right now and whatever situation there is, of course everyone's always trying their best. That's what people can manage right now. Even if it doesn't look that way, it is. That's what I believe anyway. It takes people different times, different rhythms to get to a certain place, but it's like, in this moment, at this time, you're really just trying your best. And none of us know what we're doing. We're trying to tell people, okay, I think this worked for me in the past, or you're going up to other people. I know I always am being like, what do I do? Because we all just want answers, but the only way you can get the answers is just to do it. You just got to try and put yourself out there and do something, because otherwise you're just hearing a lot of noise, and then what? So
I think that's a great way to end this.
Yeah.
It's a great note for sure.
It's a great talk. It's fun.
But thank you so much for coming out and for coming out to the truck.
This is such a cool truck. I'm very impressed that you did this by scratch.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
If everyone can see what this looks like, I can't even imagine starting a project like this. So good on you.
Yeah, it's been as I mentioned, like, the only thing I can describe it is it's been an adventure.
Good. Yeah.
That's it.
You gotta give them more about that.
And that was originally supposed to be like the purpose of this, was to talk more about the adventures and what I'm going through while being on the road.
Mhm.
But then while bringing people on, I'm just so fascinated with finding out what other people are doing and what their thought process is for my own cathartic purposes.
Sure.
Because then, especially hearing when people go through similar things that I did, it's like, okay, I'm gonna be okay.
Yes, of course. You're always going to be great.
Yeah.
But you know, next talk, I'm so interested to hear like what you've been learning, because you've been doing something that I think a lot of people have been thought about doing, you know, like just kind of escaping and just stripping away at certain things and living in a certain way that takes away a lot of, if I can say, pressure of what other expectations are.
Yes, but then there's also the pressures that come from people that are like, what are you doing?
Oh, but everyone always says that.
Yeah, yeah.
I got that.
Yeah.
I left a really good job and people are like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Right?
No,
Everyone's
it's
going to say that when you go, like, because the reason is this is different, and different is threatening to people, whether they want to admit it or not. So that's just a projection of their own feelings.
Yeah.
Right?
Because like I've expressed to people, and I think I mentioned it too on the podcast, where it's like the reason why I did this is I just wanted to get back to my needs versus my wants. And I found myself at a very greedy place of just wanting a lot of shit.
Interesting.
And I accumulated so much crap. And that was a testament when I moved out, where the only thing that I kept from my place were these chairs.
Right.
And everything else I built here and for its own specific purpose. And it's given me that grounding thought of like, okay, let's see what I need. Especially when I go to places and like I'll see souvenirs and things. I'm like, okay, where in the truck am I going to put this? Do I really need this? And if I do, I'll get it, and then I'll find a place for it here. But majority of the times, I'll put it back on the shelf.
Wow, that speaks volumes. Really, it does, because I don't think a lot of people would be able to say goodbye to those comforts. You know, certain comforts, and when you strip all that away, you're like, I didn't need any of that. Yeah.
And I think that's like the key to just living is just knowing that you have enough to live.
Oh yeah. Like when I drove down from Calgary to Vancouver, I took maybe not even a quarter of what I owned in that car with me. And then I used half of that in the car. So, and I came from having, you know, like, I really, I don't mean this to brag, it's just to give set up of like what I had. I had like a massive condo, a walk-in closet that was stuffed with things, you know, and then I packed up my little Honda Civic and drove out here, and I'm like, I didn't need any of that.
I came out here with 3 suitcases.
Yeah, that's all. Like, what else do you need?
Yeah.
And it makes you focus on different things.
No, that's that. And I think that's just where we're trying to get to is, and one thing too, like I'm excited for is when we wrap up the first season of the podcast, where I'm going to take a nice break from social media, because like the big thing that's like really locking me into it is the fact that, oh, we have a new episode this week, let me get the word out. And I feel like I put myself into that prison. But like this, where it's just like taking it a day at a time, we just get it out. Last episode for the season is next Thursday, and then I just get to relax.
Good. Do it. Go. Are you gonna go on a road trip?
I don't know.
Well,
we'll see. I'm definitely gonna be doing that in summertime though, for sure.
Yeah. Sweet. Do it.
I just got back from a road trip.
Oh yeah. You forgetting, like you're like on the road right now, right? Yeah.
And I got a motorcycle too, so I'm gonna
sweet.
head out on that and just explore. Nice. Especially we got some good weather today. It's not raining for the first
Go do it
time
this afternoon.
Yeah.
All right. I should probably head, but this is really great.
Thanks for coming. Everybody, Yvonne Chapman, check her out.
Thank you guys.
Avatar is probably going to come out when this episode drops. So check it out. Check out what she does.
Ooh, I don't know. Avatar, I think it's not going to be out until next year at some point.
Yeah.
When is this? Oh, okay. Great. I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea when it's coming out, but hopefully it'll coincide.
I guess to stay up to date with that, follow her on Instagram.
Thanks, guys.
YP Chapman?
YP Chapman.
YP Chapman. What's the P?
Pan. Pann.
Yvonne Pan Chapman.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming out.
Ingat kayo.
Sweet.